Our next reading is Creating a World of Dichotomy, Categorizing Sex and Gendering Cultural Messages. Next, let's create some definition. First is sex. Sex is defined as biological attributes of femaleness and maleness. Gender is the social and cultural meanings of femininity and masculinity. Cultural messages are determined and gendered experiences of the body. And also, bodies determine social roles. In this reading, the argument is that there is no relationship between sex organs and gender. Both are co-constructed. Gender norms are a result of socialization or the cultural messages that teach us about how to act in society. And gender practices shape our physical bodies. Gender is a system of organizing that Western cultures have devised to organize and make sense of our lives. We do not categorize based on actual reproductive capacity. Those who can reproduce, the fertiles, and those who cannot, the infertiles. Physical differences between males and females' bodies exist. These differences are socially meaningless until practices transform them into social facts. Even though socially constructed phenomena are not real in terms of being an innate part of our bodies, they are real in their effects on our lives and life chances. And in many ways, their effects may leave a mark on our bodies as well. Breaking gender expectations can have serious social sanctions. 1, we have the cult of true womanhood. And 2, we have the two-spirit people. In some cultures, there are some people or persons who are able to gender switch or have ambiguous gender identity, in which the U.S. culture provides no recognizable parallels. We have to recognize our two worlds when we consider gender, the physical and symbolic. First part is the embodied knowledge. Embodied knowledge is the knowledge of the self and others via experiences of one's body. Every use of the body has meaning, and every meaning and interpretation is experienced through the body. In the 19th century, the West transitioned to capitalism, industrialism. Economic work was outside of the home, and the world was divided into the public and private spheres. Division of labor now was by gender, and to reinforce this practice, gender ideologies became embedded in most institutions. This ideology of women's true place was not easily attainable. Many families depended on the paid labor of women and could not afford to have them sitting idly by. Thus, the cult of true womanhood functioned as a class ideology. Why does the West, for the most part, only think that there is two gendered categories? This is a dualistic type of thinking. It also creates binaries that are thought of as polar opposites. Both dualistic thinking and typification create the categorization system that allows us to believe in the naturalness of femaleness and maleness. The world is much more complex, and this idea of the binary reduces the variability with which we can describe the world. The second problem with dualism is that we rarely create equal and opposite options within our dualisms. We tend to think hierarchically. Typifying is the process of linking objects abstractly into categories such that we can think in terms of what is typical. If you cannot typify, you would have to figure out each object that you encounter as if it were new to you each time you encountered it. That's why we have prototypes. However, when we put assumptions onto those prototypes, they create stereotypes. And this is particularly true when applied to people. Typifications can be thought of by the more familiar term stereotypes. Stereotyping is the use of common sense and often discriminatory assumptions about groups of people to make predictions about characteristics of an individual. These typifications and stereotypes are developed by socialization and cultural experiences. Typifications disregard aberrations rather than changed category systems. Heteronormativity is the belief that institutionalized heterosexuality should be the standard for legitimate, intimate relationships. Within the heteronormativity paradigm, sex, gender, and sexual orientation are ideologically fused and are assumed to be based on innate characteristics of the body, rather than social prescriptions. Also, bodies are regarded in a hierarchical fashion. Male bodies are viewed as being superior, and there's a ranking based on generalization of bodies and how they perform gender. Heteronormativity is assumed to be natural. And again, this is a binary, and typifying assumptions are attached to heteronormativity. Gender roles are the expectations of how to perform a gender assignment. The author's argument is, what we argue then is that via the gender box structure, we encourage or discourage people with certain presumed genitalia to or from participating. So what about nature and its implications in terms of gender and gender identity? When we consider intersex individuals, we have to really think about how important is nature versus nurture. Intersex individuals create 1.7 of all live births. These are people born with various ambiguities of genital appearance or chromosomal or hormonal differences. Often, parents are often pressured by physicians to fix the genitals of their intersex infants via surgery. This is to make the babies eventually normal men and women. However, these surgeries often tend to lack the regard for sexual pleasure. And again, the child has no autonomy. There's no definition of self for the child. Another social category we should consider is trans-identified individuals. Transsexuals are people who have undertaken some form of surgical alteration of the body. Transgendered individuals denotes anyone who defines themselves as not fitting the requisite body-gender dualism prescribed by heteronormativity. And they challenge, this idea of being transgender challenges the preeminence of the body's determination of the person's psyche.